What you're looking at here is a small study, painted pretty quickly, pretty loosely. And I used this small study as a reference painting for this larger painting, which is painted on a 20" by 24" linen stretcher. And I'm going to show you how I painted this landscape in this video. It's the same scene, the same light, completely different scale. I want to walk you through the whole process, start to finish, because landscape painting is one of those things that looks harder than it is. Until you understand a few key principles, where to start, how to build depth and distance without overworking it, and how to know when not to add another brush stroke. So if you've ever stared at a landscape and felt completely overwhelmed, this video is going to help you. So I'm painting on a 20" by 24" Belgian linen stretcher that's oil primed, and I'm now blocking in the painting. So this is the very start, and I'm just sketching out my composition here. I'm using burnt sienna, and I'm also using oil paint. So the brand of paint I'm using is Blue Ridge Oils, and if you want to get some, I've put a link in the description box below. Now, as you can see in the footage here, I actually have my study, my reference painting in the corner. Now that painting I actually created as part of a Improve Your Landscape Painting in 7 Days painting course, which is over at my art school. So if you want to learn how to paint this from the very start, including the sketching, doing a value study, and then painting this little scene, then come and join me at my art school. I've put a link in the description box below. So once we've got our composition all sketched out, the first thing I do is identify where all the dark values in the landscape are first, and that includes the shadows as well. So we're going to find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground. Yet as landforms recede, the darks aren't as dark and the lights aren't as light. So if you look here in the very foreground, we're going to have our darkest shadows, and for this I used a mix of ultramarine blue with a little yellow ochre. Then we have some progressive tiers of depth as those mountains recede into the distance. So for the darker tones there, I used a mix of ultramarine blue with a little burnt sienna to desaturate, some titanium white and a little alizarin crimson. And then as you can see, those shadows are getting progressively lighter as we move into the distance. Now by painting your dark values first, you'll be able to create that range of darks, and it helps to create a whole tonal framework for the painting, and it makes everything a whole lot easier when you come to paint the areas in light. So this includes getting the values right, getting the saturation of your colors correct, all of that. It's so much easier. So for those very distant tones in the mountains, I used some low chroma colors, mainly a mix of yellow ochre with burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, a lot of titanium white and ultramarine blue. And as I've moved forward in the painting, I've just gradually increased the saturation on those mountain slopes there. Now for the foreground, we've got some lovely rich green grass. And that's because at the time of year when I took the photos, the reference photos that I used, it was spring. So these photos I took in the Martuki Valley in southern New Zealand. It's one of the most beautiful mountain valleys I've ever been to in New Zealand. I went plein air painting here as well. And this was a scene that I wanted to paint. So we got some lovely fresh green grass, and for this I used a mix of yellow ochre, cadmium yellow medium, some ultramarine blue and titanium white, and this formed the base of my green. And then I increased the saturation by mixing in some phthalo green, which is how I get some of these rich emerald green tones. So I always mix my greens by mixing in yellow and blue. But then afterwards, if I want to increase the saturation and get some of those nice grass green tones in there, I use a little bit of phthalo green or some cobalt teal, and that's how you can create some of those tasty greens. Now it's important that our greens aren't too saturated or overly saturated or looking artificial or neon, so it's always best to mix in some kind of a colour opposite on the colour wheel, i.e. something that contains red. So I often use colours such as burnt sienna or alizarin crimson, or cadmium red light if the greens are more in the foreground. Now let me just talk to you about how I continue to block in the painting. One of the things I've noticed through coaching and teaching many artists is a lot of them are struggling to loosen up their brushwork, and their painting looks a little bit too tight, overworked, too detailed. So how can we loosen up? Well, this actually starts in the blocking in stage, and whenever I block in a painting, I use the biggest brushes that I can get away with. So this forces me to create loose gestural painterly marks, and I just focus on the tonal values in the scene, i.e. the lights and darks, and just establishing the general colours as well, getting the saturation right, and just creating a map for me to work on, so that once it's dry, then I can start adding details. So start off loose to begin with, and then you can add as little or as much detail as you want later on in the painting. And because you've got this nice loose underpainting here from where you've blocked it in, it's going to just add a vitality and energy and aliveness to your paintings. So at this point of the painting, it was dry. I'd finished blocking it in. There was no detail in it, as I just focused on just the shapes, the tonal values, and the color mixing as well. And then at this point, it was time to begin the modeling stage. So this is where I'm starting to add details and work on the individual zones and elements within the painting. So one of the things you want to do when you're blocking in a painting is keep everything tonally darker to begin with, and then that's going to give us plenty of room to start adding in the areas in light. We don't want to go too light to begin with, otherwise we're going to get to a point where we might not be able to go any lighter and we've got nowhere else to go in our painting, and then we risk it looking flat. So I began working on the mountains. Now the snow on the mountains, I painted this a bit darker by mixing in some ultramarine blue, some burnt sienna, and a little bit of alizarin crimson. So that just darkens the tone of the white on the mountains. And then later on, I can start building up lighter layers. And I'm generally going to be saving my lightest values until the end of the painting. So we're building everything up until those lighter layers. Also the shadows as well. I'm going to be using the shadows to help sculpt various elements within the painting. So once I've blocked in the painting, I tend to start focusing on the areas in light first of all. So opposite to how I started the painting, where I started off with my darkest darks. But here I'm painting in my light values, such as on the snow shadows as well. And then I'm able to then start using the shadow areas to sculpt those mountain slopes. So painting in some of those exposed rocks, for example. My brushes are also starting to get a little bit smaller. And so far I've been using combinations of bristle brushes and now some synthetic flat brushes. So that's bristle flat brushes as well. Generally when I paint landscapes, I mostly use flat brushes. I think these are absolutely ideal for painting landscapes. You can get nice loose gestural brush marks with them. They're ideal for painting grass, clouds, foliage, things like that. However, when it comes to painting things that have more defined edges, such as mountains and rocks, that's when I start using the synthetic brushes. So here I'm now sculpting the shape of these mountain slopes by using my shadow mix, and this can really help to define your landscapes. So landscapes in general, when they have shadows in them, it helps to convey more of a 3D look and realism. That's not to say that you can't paint landscapes that don't have shadows, but if you're going to paint that, you've really got to make sure that your tonal values are on point. But even having just the smallest shadows in the scene goes a long way to creating that three-dimensional look. Now, another thing about when you're painting elements in the landscape, such as hills or mountains or things like trees, rocks, for example, either have them more in light or more in shadow. Don't have them 50-50, as that's a little bit distracting and displeasing in your composition. Now, I'll just share a few thoughts on the composition here, because the cool thing about this painting is that it's a pretty simple composition, and I did that on purpose. And I found that with my landscape paintings that often simple is best. So it's a simple S composition where the river or the stream is leading the eye in an S shape towards those mountains in the distance. Pretty simple. Now at this point in the painting, I'd had a couple of sessions on it and I was really working in that detail and it was starting to come together. I'd done some work on the grass as well, although the grass doesn't have loads of detail in it, and actually one of the things I do is I don't want to be painting every single blade of grass, so I just imply grass by building up lighter layers of paint as I work through the painting. And then I was working on the stream in the foreground and painting in some of those ripples and reflections there. For the water I use combinations of ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, a little bit of phthalo green and titanium white. This is probably actually one of the most detailed parts of the painting, but overall I wanted more of a looseness to this painting. I like the idea of sort of loose gestural brushwork with a little bit of detail in there, but not going overboard with the detail. Now then, if you've been struggling with your landscape painting and you'd like to improve your painting quickly, get some inspiration, learn about colours, values, composition and all sorts of elements of landscape painting, then come and join me at my art school. Every week we do a live painting class, and at the time of making this video we're doing a tree painting course at the moment. There's also the 7-day landscape painting course which helps you to improve your landscape painting in 7 days, and it's where I show you how to paint the smaller version of this painting, taking you through the whole process. There's all this and so much more, tons of in-depth painting tutorials and a really supportive community of other artists that you can chat to. They're all helping each other out, sharing their artwork and having discussions. So if that sounds good to you, then come and join us at Sam's Art School, my art school. We'd love to have you there. I've put a link in the description box below. So at this point in the painting, we were well and truly into the modelling stage, and I was thinking about getting this finished. So working on the foreground here, starting to add some highlights to the water, the suggestion of some sparkles as well. And the way to make sparkles in the water really stand out is to juxtapose them against something darker. So the shadow reflections in the water here, they're a mid-tone, but obviously a lot darker in value compared with the white of the paint of those sparkles from the direct sunlight. So that's going to make that stand out in the scene. A lot of the way that we can create impact in a painting is juxtaposing light lights against dark darks. Now I was using a rigger brush here to paint the suggestion of sparkles in the water just by painting a few dots. Now I was at the stage of just refining the painting before adding the last details. Now as I said before, I save my lightest lights until last, and the lightest lights go on the mountain slopes with the snow. Now the mountains are quite far away, but not so far away that the snow has faded out, because lights still get darker as you go into the distance, so even distant mountain snow can look darker than if it is near the foreground or the midground. So if you remember, we'll find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground, but as your landforms recede, darks aren't as dark and lights aren't as light. Just some other tips for landscape painting and values. And this is because I'm always thinking in terms of tonal values, but generally the sky and the ground planes of the grass are the more lighter values in the landscape. The slanting planes of the mountains are getting darker, and the upright planes, which are generally trees, are the darkest values in the landscape. So I'm always thinking about this. Now then, to finish up this painting, I was adding a few areas of reflected light to the snow shadows in the side of the mountain, but also some highlights to the snow in the mountain itself, and just generally tidying up the mountains in the background. There was also some rocks in the midground and last little details that I added as well to finish up the painting here. So from start to finish, as we work through the painting, we're starting off darker and then we're building up lighter tones and also increasing that detail as well. So lastly, I just finished up this painting by adding some rocks that are scattered around in the midground, and with that the painting was complete. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and check out this video here if you'd like to learn more about painting landscapes. See you next time.